بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون واتخذوا من دونه آلهة إن يردن الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا إنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر والليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وليعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون
وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متضلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم أعظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفع بعد أملي وخضعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهواه وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مدعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا محفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شدي وثاقي يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أطراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته أو تبعد من أدنيته أو تشرد من آويته أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقة وبشكرك مادحة وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا ما هكذا الظن به ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثوه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية آمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رباه أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيته وبفضلك سترته وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلته أو إحسان فضلته أو بر تنشره أو رزق تبسطه أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قوي على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أصرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بالسوء فأرد ومن كادني فكيد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني عثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك الرجاء واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنان ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعام يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بابا جان کیا میں کہوں کیا نہ کہوں رنج و علم، شام غم حال سفر شام کے زنداں کے ستم، اپنے غم تم بھی سناؤ اپنے غم میں بھی سناؤ، اپنے غم تم بھی سناؤ اپنے غم میں بھی سناؤ۔ بابا جان شمر نے جب بابا جان شمر نے جب مارے تماچے منہ پر، بالیاں کھینچی میری کرتا ہوا خون میں تر، بابا جان دیکھو ذرا بابا جان دیکھو ذرا نیل ہے رخسار میرے، کیا یتیموں پہ ستم کرتا ہے یوں کوئی بشر، شمر کو دیکھ کے میں خوف سے تھراتی ہوں، بھیا سجاد کے پیچھے ہی میں چھپ جاتی ہوں، بابا اپنے غم تم بھی سناؤ اپنے غم میں بھی سناؤ، اپنے غم تم بھی سناؤ اپنے غم میں بھی سناؤ۔ بابا جان بازو بندے بابا جان بازو بندے سب کے بندھا میرا گلا، جب رسن کھینچتی تھی دم گھٹتا تھا ہر گام میرا، بابا جان میں نے کیا بابا جان میں نے کیا پنجوں پہ چل
زاچی دے یہ مگر ہو نہ سکا، تیرے بازو ہے جدا، مجھ پہ ہے تشنالبی، تو نہ آیا آغازی، جب ردا سیر سے چنی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نہ آیا غازی، دھوپ میں تو تھا شجر تجھ سے آباد تھا غیر، ہے برہنا میرا سر، کیا نہیں تجھ کو خبر، اے علمدار وفا اس بہن کو باخدا، تجھ سے دارس تھی بڑی، تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نہ آیا غازی، تو نہ آیا غازی، پر محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔ سورۃ مبارکۃ الفاتحہ۔
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Sayyid Hasan Rizvi, respected elders, brothers, sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all the names listed on the screen in Kul Arwah al-Mu'mineen wal-Mu'minat Sawab al-Fatiha. Ayat Mayyajiban is requested for the names listed on the screen and whoever is in need of it here and elsewhere. Let us all recite it together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Now let us invite Sayyid Hasan to come forward and recite tonight's matlis. Par Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad salawat.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا والنبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع نفوسنا والطبيب ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المذلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We've reached the line in the sermon delivered in Kufa by Sayyida Zainab bint Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, where she says, هل فيكم إلا الصلف والعجب والشنف والكذب. What do you have in you besides salaf, arrogance, ujab, a higher level of arrogance and pride, and shanaf and kadhib, which we will discuss tonight, inshallah. Up until now, we've talked about the first trait of those who end up disobeying their imam and betraying their imam is that they make promises based on false motivations and false intentions. They also have this trait where they commit and perform self-praise. They brag and boast about themselves. Sometimes it's for qualities that they don't possess, which is salaf, and sometimes it's qualities that they might possess in terms of ujab. We said, according to the hadith of the sixth imam, that the source of ujab is kufr. Kufr meaning somebody is hiding and covering and concealing the truth. When somebody plants the seed of kufr, they plant it within the soil of nifaq, of hypocrisy. Why? Because once they've decided to establish a false sense of reality, then they'll start to lie about things. They'll say one thing, but they'll do something else. So they plant this kufr in nifaq, in hypocrisy, and then they'll add to it, they'll put water on this soil to help the seed grow through al-ghay, which is transgression or exceeding the bounds. Because since they've already decided to live a life of lies, then they start to go against what they believe in, really. They believe one thing, but they'll say something else. Or they say one thing and they believe something else. And we said what grows out of this, according to the sixth Imam, is the first branch that comes out is jahl and ignorance. The leaves which come out are dalala, misguidance, because once you're ignorant about what's going on, then that ignorance will take you towards something which is not true, misguidance. You won't be on the right path anymore. And that eventual conclusion, the natija, the end result, the consequences, the fruit from this plan is what? La'na and khulud fil jannah. Removal from God's mercy and spending eternity in hellfire. We started to talk about visualizing this and thinking about some sort of internal ways of curing, right? Reframing the way that we think about the issue. When we talked about the 4 different levels of ujub, the first level being a person feels superior to others and they refuse to be humble. The lie, the kufr that they're doing is that they know the truth, that whatever quality that they think they have doesn't make them better than somebody else. In fact, there might be other people better than them. There definitely will be. But the lie they tell, and they cover it up, is with that they say that this quality makes me better than other people. I'm the only one that has it, and God has gifted me with this. So we have to be careful and make sure that we always remember, whenever we see a good trait that God has given us, that God has definitely made this stronger in somebody else, and it's not the source for us to feel superior and to eliminate humility. The second level was that a person doesn't consider traits to be from God. You have something positive, good. But the second level of ujub, the lie that we tell is that I worked for this on my own. It's my ego, it's myself. And we cover up the truth that everything comes from God. And He's been putting those factors and elements in place through this system of cause and effect so that we could get this good quality in the first place. We know from, for example, from the hadith from the fourth Imam, Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, which he mentions in Salat al-Huquq, that if you see something good within you, know that it's from your father. Right? A good quality in you comes from your father. And there are other good qualities which come from your mother. So why would somebody think that whatever good trait they have is their own work? Physical genetics, meaning material genetics, and then spiritual genetics play a huge role into this as well. You didn't come up with these positive traits on your own. The third level of ujb is that you start to see your bad traits positively, right? Sometimes we're so blunt with people and we think that, yeah, I'm just telling the truth. The lie is that, I can harm people. I can harm mu'mineen. I can disguise the truth, and that's my, love for the imam. Remember the example we gave of somebody harming other mu'mineen when they go for ziyarah, pushing people out of the way and disrespecting the rights of other mu'mineen and mu'minat. The truth is that it's a sin. You're not keeping a mu'min should be at peace, and you should be keeping them in a situation where they're feeling at peace. If you're going around and trampling upon the rights of other mu'mineen, mu'minat, this is not a positive trait. So don't think of this bad trait positively. And if something happens in terms of your azadari, and you think that this is something good, and you're actually trampling upon other people's rights, you get into fights and arguments, and you think that this is an expression of love for the imam, you're fooling yourself. This is love for your ego and not for your imam. The fourth level was a person feels religious entitlement. They're a spoiled brat. They think that God needs to give them certain gifts. They are entitled to certain good things. So what is the lie they say? That God should reward me because of all the good that I've done. What is the truth? That you are absolutely nothing. You don't even deserve to exist. Every single thing that we've been given is out of the complete and overwhelming mercy of and generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So tonight we're going to go through two of these last traits which are mentioned in this one line by Sayyid Zainab alayhi salam. And then when we have time, inshallah, I'll try to make sure we have time. As I mentioned on Sunday, I want to read through that full sermon of Bibi Sakina alayhi salam, maybe with some commentary in between if we have time. If not, then I'll just read through it and then we will end at that point, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, هل فيكم إلا صلف ولا عجب? Is there anything in you, she's saying to the people of Kufa, is there anything in you except salaf? Right? You bragging and boasting about traits which you don't have? Wal ujab. Even bragging about traits that you do have, but you're performing kufr, right? Meaning that you're hiding the real truth about this. And then she says, wa shanaf wal kadhib. So what is shanaf and what is kadhib? The word shanaf has two possible meanings in Arabic. One meaning is that shanaf literally means earring. So you might think, well, why would she mention, an earring? It doesn't really make sense here. So sometimes it's used, allegorically or metaphorically, right? An earring is what? It's a decoration which is put on the ear so that for the person who's looking at the individual with that earring, it's pleasing to them, right? This is something that decorates the ear and it's pleasing to the person looking at it. And of course, to the person wearing it as well. And sometimes we have this, generally used in English too, right? It's very pleasing to my ear. It's a pleasing sound. So we use this sort of idea metaphorically as well. So one of the metaphorical usages which is used here is shanaf means sweet talk. When somebody says something which is pleasing to your ears. It sounds nice. So for example, in the phrase that you would use in Arabic is shannaf al-adhan. It's when you decide to please somebody's ears. Like they hear your voice and they get delighted from it. Whereas shanf or shunuf literally means ear or earring. So what perhaps, if we take this meaning, what is Sayyidah Zainab trying to say? She's saying that all you do, so you break your promises and treaties, you boast about yourselves, right? You're basically lying and doing all this, and all you do is sweet talk people. Specifically, you sweet talk whoever's in charge. You sweet talk your enemies. So the principle, and it ties into perhaps what she's been saying before. You see, the principle here is what? That actions, our work, and our efforts should speak for themselves. A person doesn't need to over-advertise and over-exaggerate and boast about, the positive traits that they may have. What you see sometimes is that whenever somebody talks too much, right, they really big something up, they hype something up, then that makes us think that, look, this thing probably doesn't have much value. The person probably doesn't have anything. They just have to talk it up so much so that we, get attracted to it, or we get enticed towards it. Think about when a company really pushes out a lot of advertising for a certain product, right? You just see it constantly being advertised. This might make you think the product is probably worthless. It's probably garbage. They have to advertise using all these different fancy, means and different ways, trying to be clever, because the product doesn't really have much, so they spend all this extra money on advertising. Politicians do the same thing, right? They sweet talk. They talk a lot, right? You'll see politicians, for example, if they're trying to pander to a certain group, they'll use their language, right? We've seen in many elections where if they're trying to cater or pander to the Latino or Latina vote, they'll start to speak Spanish in the middle of the speech, right? Just to say, oh, look, I know your language too. Or maybe, for example, right, a candidate might say, inshallah, in the beginning, in the middle of their debate, if they really decide to. It's a bunch of pandering. There's nothing behind what they're saying. They really don't care about that group's needs, right? As an example, I'm saying, if it's ever happened, I don't know. They don't care. It's just sweet talk. And unfortunately, the problem is the people on the other end, the receiving end, it feels so nice. Oh, look, he's speaking to us. This is so great. We love to hear these things. But the people who really know what's going on behind the scenes, they don't get tricked by these sort of ideas. What's interesting is that this concept itself, not just in terms of akhlaq, is it bad to just boast like this so much and to hype so many things up. In fiqh, actually, according to some of our marajir, it's actually makruh to boast about things, specifically in the market. So for all you business people, this would be a good time for you to put your phone down and maybe listen a little bit, right? If you have a product and you really hype it up, you're really just over-advertising and you're really trying to sell it, it's not haram, but it's makruh. You should let your product, advertise itself. You don't need to, I'll give you the example at least in Iran, right? Whenever we'd go to the bazaar. Some of the bazaris, especially the ones near the haram, they were notorious for just never being able to keep their mouth shut, right? They had to just, no matter what it was, if it was a pencil, they had to describe like this pencil like it came from Jannah. Like, you don't understand, this is the greatest brand ever. This pencil will never break. I'm like, it's a pencil, like, come on, but, the problem is what? They need to get the sale. They need to talk in order to try to trick you psychologically so that you buy the pencil, make them a couple toman, or whatever, cents, whatever it is. And usually, why would they have to do that? Because they know the product can't hold its own weight. So they have to make it up with words, with hype. what Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam seems to be saying is that that's what you people have to do too. You Kufans, you Basrans, whoever of you called us, you don't have anything behind you. You have no characteristics. You don't have positive stuff, positive traits within you. So you talk too much. You sweet talk us. And it's not just us that you sweet talk. You sweet talk the rulers too. No matter who's in charge, you will try and just, well, be a brown noser, right, to put it one way. Whoever's there, you want to be in their good books. No matter who it is. Right? Just this flirtatious talk, as the actual phrase that she uses is basically like you flirt with these people. That's what, if you want to kind of translate it in modern terms. That's what Sayyida Zainab is basically saying. That's all you're doing. Right? You're just trying to attract everybody towards you. But you have nothing there. You have nothing to offer. And this is something that has happened in history. No matter who is there, Muslims got into the habit of whatever the reason was, fear, power, money. They ended up trying to sweet talk whoever was there, whether they were a good ruler or a false ruler. And this is something that you and I have to be careful of, right? In case that we may be doing something like that today. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So this is one possible meaning of the word shanaf, is sweet talking. Saying something that's pleasing to people's ears. The meaning here that Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam seems to be indicating is that you boast, you break oaths, you talk too much, you don't have anything to back it up. That's one possible meaning. There's another possible meaning of shanaf that some other ulama mention. And they say shanaf actually comes and is related to the meaning of kiraha and both, meaning spite and hate and vengeance. So they say what Sayyida Zainab actually is saying is that there's nothing in you except for praising and boasting about traits you don't have, having this self-praise for things that you might have, and that you have this intense hatred within you. We might say, what, it seems a little off place. Like, what is she talking about here? So these are some possible meanings maybe we can connect this. Now, we've all heard the history of Kufa, right? We know exactly, for example, that many of the people of Kufa had this hate against Imam Ali, alayhi salam, right? Throughout history. The immediate history was what? When Imam Ali alayhi salam was Khalifa, and he wanted to go and fight Muawiyah, he was constantly calling the Muslims, okay, we need to fight Muawiyah. Well, first it was against, in the Battle of Jamal, against Aisha. So first it's that. Then you have Muawiyah. Then after that, against the Khawarij. So constantly the Muslims are having to go to war. And unfortunately, some things never change, but Muslims were just lazy. They're like, we don't want to do this. For those of you who have seen some of the first khutbahs in Nahjul Balagha, the Muslims are complaining about this. They're like, we're tired of going to war. It's too hot. Can we wait till winter? Winter comes around, they're like, it's too cold to fight. Let's wait till summer. And Imam is just like, I wish I had 10 people like Muawiyah has. To paraphrase, like, you guys are a bunch of losers. You don't back up what you say. You know that there's people on the other side who are standing against Islam, and you're not willing to fight. What good are you to me? But some of those people, they held that vengeance against the Imam since then, because they never really they never really supported him. They were just kind of there. Others had vengeance, why? Because they were Khawarij, who their parents or grandparents were killed because of Imam Ali, alayhi salam, or there were those who supported Uthman, so they were on the other side, or supporters of Aisha, so they're on the other side. So with all these people in Kufa, again, that's when I hear people say, everybody was Shia of Imam Ali. How is that the case? So many people in the Muslim world, especially in Kufa and Basra and other places, they still had this hatred against the Imam for what had transpired, just a short little while ago. So they remembered that. So when they saw that, unfortunately, you hold that grudge in your heart, even when they know, because remember, what is Imam Husseini alayhi salam doing in Karbala? Right in front of them. He's telling them, don't you know who I am? Don't you know my grandfather Rasulullah? Don't you know, my mother Fatima? Don't you know my father Ali? Don't you know Ja'far al-Tayyar? Don't you know all these people? They say, yes, we know all of them. Do you know why we're coming out and killing you? Because we hate your father. Simple. They knew he's from Ahlul Bayt. They knew the history. They knew that that line was blessed, and it's, they know about Ayat al-Tathir. They didn't deny these things. It was their grudge. It was vengeance. That was it. Pure hate. It blinded them. And it wasn't just with Imam Ali. It was others, right? You can go farther back in time, meaning up until Badr. You think that they forgot what Imam Ali alayhi salam did in all those single battles, right? Some people are busy running away. Imam Ali is with his sword, killing a lot of these people's ancestors. They didn't forget that. Up until, when Banu Umayyah came into, in power. They never forgot this. This was always a sort of, kind of family feud which was happening all up until that point. And people forget that sort of family, lineage, socio-political sort of environment which was going on there. A lot of those Muslims didn't care about Islam. It was just this, Muhammad's line, we got to stop them. We got to put our guys in power and we have to be the ones who run Islam. I'm sorry, but that's what the history says. And you see exactly, that's what you see. Yazid said, we played the game, you played the game, and guess what? We're winning. He said, what Muhammad did, it's a game, and we're winning the game right now. It's his own words in his own poetry, right? This is in the history books. It's not some conspiracy theory, not something we're making up. We don't even have to go that far, too. Go what? Under Imam Hasan, alayhi salam, same thing. Same thing. Khawarij are there. Supporters of Muawiyah are there. Same things. They don't want to fight. And we see what happens at the end. So many people now are against Imam Hasan that he's forced to sign a treaty. What else can he do? His own people are ready to assassinate him. This is the unfortunate sort of history that we have to deal with. The Muslims know the truth, but because of this, all these different factors which lead them to hate, to vengeance, to bearing and holding grudges, right? Like the ahadith that we know, that they're holding that coal in their hand, and they don't care if it burns them or not. They know it, but some people, unfortunately, they thrive off of that burning. And that's a very, very sad state of affairs. Right? We have many narrations which talk about this idea of spite and hatred and malice. I could have brought so many of them, but I didn't want to. Because it's obvious. Nobody would ever say that having hate, having malice, having spite, having vengeance is a good thing. Unless you've reached that third stage of ujub, right? Where you see something like this as a good thing. No, that's not the case. The problem is that it got so bad with these people that it completely messed with their sense of reality. And this brings us to our fourth quality, right? So shanaf, according to the second meaning, is this sense of hate. And she's saying it, you people had hate. That's why you disobeyed. That's why you broke your treaty. That's why you came out and killed my brother. Now what's the fourth one that she mentions in this line? And kadhib, that you're a bunch of liars. And I think this one ties everything together, all the other traits together. So let's explain this in a few minutes. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Kadhib just means lying. Simple. Now, doesn't it seem, after all these things that say the Zainab alayhi salam is mentioning, right? That, self-praise and boasting and, having either, being sweet talkers or having this vengeance. Like, these are deep spiritual diseases. And then she mentions lying, right? Like, I don't know, it seems like she was up on this high and then she mentioned like some simple little spiritual disease. Like, it seems a little strange. Well, we have to remember that there's two types of sidq, two types of honesty, and therefore two types of lying. One type is the type that you and I are used to talking about, especially with our kids, or what we normally hear in a akhlaq lesson. It's honesty with others, right? Or lying to others. Don't lie to other people. If you know the truth, don't hide the truth. Tell other people the truth. If you owe somebody $100, then give them $100, right? Don't cheat, don't steal, don't lie. Okay, that's obvious. You don't need a dars akhlaq for that. If you do it, you know you're doing something wrong. But it seems like that's probably not what Sayyid Zainab's talking about. Because it's too easy, too simple. It seems like, especially if we take in context everything else that she's mentioned, and she wants to tie in all the other spiritual diseases and traits, she's probably talking about the more deadly type of honesty, or the more deadly type of dishonesty. Which is not lying with others, or being honest with others, it's actually lying to yourself and being truthful to yourself, or what we call self-deception or self-honesty. If we grab everything, if we wanted to summarize so far everything that she's been trying to get across about what their problem is, we could probably say the fundamental issue behind these people from Kufa, from Basra, in Mecca, Medina, anybody who went against and allowed this to happen to the Ahlul Bayt, you would say it's the fact that they were not authentic to themselves. They didn't have self-authenticity. They were lying to themselves. Plain and simple. As you put in modern language, right? They weren't living the truth or their truth. That's why somebody would boast. That's why somebody would brag about traits that they may or may not have. That's why they would hold grudges. That's why they would sweet talk other people. That's why they would have this kufr in their hearts and nifaq and everything else we talked about. Why? Because they are lying to themselves. They're putting up a false sense of reality with the world, but deep down they know exactly what they're doing. You and I know exactly what we're doing when we lie, when we cheat, when we steal, when we disobey, when we're disrespectful to our friends and our family members and community members. We know exactly what we're doing. We might try to rationalize it, to make these excuses and give sadaqah, do something to kind of counterbalance it. But deep down, if we sat and actually did tafakkur and thought about it, we would know we're just playing games. The problem is we don't actually spend that time to be honest with ourselves. Most of us are too busy running the rat race, right? We got our work schedule cut out for us, especially if we're still work from home, 8-4, 9-to-5 schedule. I have to unwind from that. Then I got to sit down and watch TV or do something else. And there's food and there's house stuff and then there's errands and bills. All these things are taking up my time. When are we actually allowing ourselves to unwind spiritually? We need it. Our greatest ulama, they would say you need at least 45 minutes to 1 hour a day to sit in silence, to just be with your own thoughts. Most of us barely have even 5 minutes to do that. And the worst part is what happens, right? I don't have it with me, but whenever that time ends up coming, what do we grab? Our phones. Because we don't know how to be one with ourselves. We don't know how to be present with ourselves. We don't know how to deal with silence. We don't know how to contemplate and think. It's so awkward for us, right? In the same way that it's awkward with somebody else, right? You're with somebody else at a dinner or having a conversation. If there's a pause, what do? They both whip out their phones. You're right across from each other. You can't think of something to say? You have to whip out your phone and go on social media. Because you can't build a connection there, you have to try to build these virtual connections. And the same thing happens internally. We can't build a connection inside, so then we have to go and find it somewhere else. And I don't want to give it to myself, but at least I'll give everybody else the benefit of the doubt and the excuses. Who's ever come and taught us how to contemplate? Has there ever been a lesson on contemplation and tafakkur? I don't think so. A lot of stuff on tawalla and tabarra, which is not even the correct pronunciation, by the way, but that's fine. Let people come and mispronounce it and explain those terms as much as they want, right? Because that's what's important. It's tawalli and tabarri, but whatever, it doesn't matter, right? But these are the important things sometimes. But the things which are really going to help us get closer to the Imam at the time, to figure out what our real spiritual skills and diseases are, the traits that we actually need, so that we can be more authentic to ourselves, so that we don't lie to ourselves, so that we can be better spouses, so we can be better parents, so we can be better children, better community members and everything. We don't have the skill sets and the tools. And I know many, and people have asked about these things before. I've had a lot of comments about this. Like, we have to have classes on this and we have to go through that. So it's not everybody who's just kind of saying, let's have La'nat 101 classes. Nobody's really asked for that. But sometimes, some people, they decide that that's the most important thing, right, to touch on that topic. Khair, I understand that. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I can understand too, right? Because if the sixth Imam here is saying that if you have ujub in your heart, it's because you've planted kufr, the fruit is what? It's going to be la'na and you'll be in hell forever. So it might make sense that we do figure out what is la'na in the first place, right? Maybe we don't want that to happen to us, right? In that sense. But tafakkur, contemplation, figuring out how to speak to ourselves, to really understand our own thoughts, our real thoughts, not these random ideas that come in and out. Right? Just being silent, figuring out what's going on. Now that's a big skill set, right? Now, I'm probably not going to ever turn that into a series on Thursday night because I don't think it's going to work, right? I'm sorry, I don't think it's ever going to work out. Maybe 1 or 2 points at some point, maybe sometime in the future, maybe a few tips here and there. But as the one hadith, I believe this is from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The first step is what? He says, as-samt rawdatul fikr. Samt, silence, being quiet, is rawdatul fikr. It's the garden of fikr, of thoughts, of thinking. So before you start going crazy, overthinking things, just be quiet and just, as some people say, just be the watcher. Just see what's going on in your mind. Don't judge, don't make any analysis or any analyses. Just allow the thoughts to come in and just see what's going on. And that's it. You want to take notes? Take notes. You want to use an app to write them down? Whatever. Just sit there quietly for as long as you can and just see what's going on in your head. As you start to do this little by little and you practice silence without any sort of devices, no other sounds around you, I'm not saying like, go on a mountain or go in some garden and sit there and, with your legs crossed. I'm not saying you have to go and meditate. I'm just saying just be quiet for a few minutes, right? I don't care if you're doing it on the toilet, whatever. Just don't bring your phones in the bathroom, right? Whatever. Just take the time, stay quiet, and just see what's going on in your mind. Slowly and, surely, you'll start to see there's a lot of thoughts in my mind which are really crazy. And some existentialist philosophers have actually talked about that, right? This idea of what they say, the call of the void. That when a person when they're not in tune with their real self, they don't put it in these words, but putting it in our own words, your nafs, or shaitan, through your nafs, will start to put these ridiculous ideas in your head. And I'm sure some of you have come across this, right? It's happened where an idea will come across and it'll just sound like, where did that come from? Right? I don't want to say it because sometimes they become very vulgar and very profane, right? But you're just like, that seems really weird. Why would that happen? And we just dismiss it really quickly. And some people might get anxious and paranoid by it. Like, why is that thought coming in my mind? Because we don't know where it's coming from, how to control it. And there's, again, a huge discussion within akhlaq and irfan about why these things take place. But again, we're going to leave it there because I want to go through the few lines of the sermon of Bibi Sakina before we end tonight. And then we'll move on to the musibah, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Also, I think in terms of practical steps about how we can learn to strengthen ourselves properly, spiritually speaking, so that we, doing it for ourselves, so we can have a stronger families, again, being stronger spouses, being stronger parents, siblings, kids, whatever. Then we can come together and strengthen ourselves as a community. I think this, inshallah, hopefully, with our visiting scholar, Sheikh Jafar, inshallah, on Saturday night, hopefully these are some of the points that we want to discuss. So if you have specific questions, I would say, think about them ahead of time, come prepared, and then bring those questions on the session on Saturday night, which I think is 10:30, inshallah. And I think the messages have gone out. So bring that, inshallah, and hopefully we can, benefit from Sheikh Jafar, inshallah. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So as I mentioned, not all the books, the maqatil. Some books of history mention that Bibi Sakina was one of the last ones out of 4 to give a sermon in Kufa. So in the major works it's not there, but there are some other secondary sources which do mention it. So maybe it happened, maybe it did. But khair, I think it's very powerful. And even if, let's say there's a doubt in its authenticity, just the words themselves, based on what we saw from the other sermons, or at least Bibi Zainab's sermons, I think should give us pause and make us reflect upon our own spiritual issues. So I'm just going to read, and I'll skim a few parts. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'll read parts of it, and then I'll just move on to the Gham Masaib. She starts saying, Alhamdulillah, a hamd and whose numbers are more than the grains of the sand and is weightier than the earth and the arsh of Allah combined. I praise Allah, I trust Allah, and I perform shahada, I bear witness, I testify that there is no God except Allah. He is alone, He has no partner. Muhammad is a servant and messenger, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And I testify that his family, his pure offspring, were slaughtered near the banks of the river Furat. Look at how she starts off like an alim, an alima, right? Talking about Allah, talking about His characteristics, talking about the Prophet, then to the Ahlul Bayt, and then to the dhulm that was done. Ya Allah, you took from your creation the promise of allegiance, of bay'ah for the wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and made this wajib upon them. Look at this. Even somebody who's 4 years old is doing tabligh to the people. But your creation broke their promise of allegiance. Same point that Sayyidah Zainab was mentioning. They usurped his right and killed him. Then they made his son Hussein shaheed. See, she could have said my father, but even in the beginning, she's connecting it all back to Allah. She's making it all about wilayah. It's really beautiful. I'll skip some parts. Ya Allah, I'm very young, but I'm aware of the greatness of the attributes of my grandfather. Ya Allah, you are well aware of how my grandfather protected your tawheed and your prophet. Ya Allah, he had no concern for this world, He fought in your way. You chose him. And he declared him to be your Sirat al-Mustaqim. Ya Ahl Kufa. You are cheaters. You're deceivers. Allah tested you through the Ahlul Bayt. Through us. He tested you and your iman. But we are the ones who are successful through the test. Allah has given His knowledge to us and made us the hujjat, the trustees of His knowledge. We are the source of His wisdom. We are the hujjat of Allah, hujjat Allah upon this, on the heavens and the earth, in all dimensions. You made my grandfather shaheed. Your swords are dripping with the blood of the Ahlul Bayt. Your hearts have been filled with hatred and animosity from us. Again, continuing with the same lines that Sayyid Zainab was saying. You slaughtered the Ahlul Bayt, and afterwards, you rejoiced and celebrated. You lied about Allah. You were deceitful, and Allah does not allow those who are deceitful to succeed. You've committed every atrocity against us. You've stolen our wealth, but you will not gain any benefit from us. Soon, the wrath and curse of Allah that has become your destiny will fall upon you. You will have to face the immense wrath of Allah. Soon you will taste its severity. May Allah's la'na be upon the zalimeen. We know those who obeyed us and those who waged war against us, and those who came to our support and those who abandoned us. And you were amongst those who waged war against us, because your hearts have become impure from filth. Allah sealed your hearts, sealed your eyes, and sealed your ears. Shaitan became your leader and led you astray. And as I mentioned last time, she continued and mentioned more of their spiritual diseases and their traits. At the end, the people of Kufa, they tell her, O daughter of purity, Ya bint al-tahara, for the sake of Allah, please stop. Stop your speech. Your words are burning our souls. We feel as if we are about to die. For the sake of Allah, stop mentioning the sufferings which we committed against you. Do not reveal our wretchedness. We admit to committing grave sins. I wonder how proud Imam Hussein would have been if he was able to witness his daughter giving this sort of speech to the people of Kufa. Every father has this sort of pride in their heart whenever they see any of their children go. We remember, for example, Ali Akbar. When he went out into battle, when he was able to come back, he came to his father like, he was some say he was in his 20s. He comes back acting like a young child, saying, Baba, did you see the way I was doing jihad? Did you see the way I was fighting? Did you see what I was doing? And you're saying, marhaba, marhaba. Yes, you did a great job, Bunaya. You did a wonderful job. Children always want to seek the praise of their parents. And parents are always happy when their children perform these great feats and these great actions. I wonder how proud Hussein would have been to see Bibi Sakina with that patience, that sabr, that hilm, that forbearance, doing tabligh and trying to give advice to the people of Kufa in this manner, in the same way that her elder brother Imam Sajjad did, and the way that her aunt Zainab alayhi salam and Kulthum did. But one person who would say that sometimes we neglect to talk about her is, what about Sakina's mother, Rabab, or Rabab as sometimes she's referred to. She was also present. Maybe she had some pride in her heart when she saw her daughter saying these things. Maybe some part of her was proud as well when the water first came on Sham Ghariba. When that water first came, the wife of Hur, according to some, she brought the water. She gave it to Zainab. Zainab now brings it to Sakina and says, Sakina, the water is for you now. Go ahead and drink. I know you've been waiting many days for this. And when Sakina takes the water and goes running back and forth among the tents, and Zainab saying, Sakina to Hussein, where are you going? What are you looking for? Just drink the water. He said, Auntie Zainab, didn't you tell me, Pupi Amma, that water should go to the youngest? She said, yes, of course. It's like, well, then I'm looking for my baby brother Asghar to give him water first. I'm sure this is something that Rabab, although her heart was broken, she was also proud of Sakina for doing this. Now we see Rabab being proud of Sakina in Kufa. But what about the heartbreak that Rabab had to deal with? Now we know that many of those women who were present in Karbala, they all had various different bala and musibat and masa'ib to deal with. But the masa'ib and musibah of Rabab is like nobody else's. You see, all of them gave somebody away. You see, Farwa gave away Qasim. Layla gave away Akbar. Al-Banid gave away Abbas. Hussein gave away his children. They all gave away their children. But Rabab is the only one who gave away her son, but expected her son to come back. No mother then expected that when Asghar was sent out to get water, that he wouldn't be able to come back like this, or that he would come back slaughtered like a camel. All the other mothers, they had their children with them that survived after Karbala. They came from Karbala to Kufa, from Kufa to Sham, and they were all back into Medina. But what would we say to Rabab? Rabab now, who has to leave her daughter buried in Sham, who now has to come back empty-handed. Even al-Masa'ib Zainab, when she comes back to Medina, when she's finally back in Medina, when, as the famous story goes, she comes back to her house, her own husband doesn't recognize her. She finally walks in with her broken back. She looks into the room and the beds and the mattresses of An and Muhammad, and she begins to cry, wa Ana wa Muhammada. But she can at least grieve with her husband. She can grieve with Abdullah ibn Ja'far. But Rabab, when she goes back into her house, maybe she sees the jula of Asghar and there's nobody there. She looks at the mattress of Sakina and there's nobody there. And Hussein is not there for her. She has no one there to cry. She has no one there to cry with. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، روزہ شبیر پر دوں گا دعا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، ہے جہاں گنج شہیدہ، ہے جہاں نہر فرات، ہے جہاں گنج شہیدہ، ہے جہاں نہر فرات، جس جگہ سید میرا پیاسا رہا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، جس جگہ جاگی تھی قسمت حر کی وہ دیکھوں گا میں، جس جگہ جاگی تھی قسمت حر کی وہ دیکھوں گا میں، آسیوں پر کیسے ہوتی ہے عطا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، جس جگہ عباس کے بازو قلم ہو کر گرے، جس جگہ عباس کے بازو قلم ہو کر گرے، اس جگہ میں بھی کروں ماتم ذرا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل، دل الجھ کر آ گیا برچھی میں اکبر کا جہاں، دل الجھ کر آ گیا برچھی میں اکبر کا جہاں، دل وہاں میں بھی کروں اپنا فدا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، रोज़ाए शब्बीर पर दूंगा दुआले चल मुझे मोहम्मद वाल मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि
السلام عليك يا رسول الله يا نبي الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين يا سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا أبا محمد الحسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد قمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونحيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المتحرة. لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلحمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرزي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي. وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه. السلام عليكم يا أسفياء الله ووداءه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الزكي الناسي. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله، بأبي أنتم وأمي تبتم، وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم، وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوسيين، السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما، وأقدمهم إيمانا، وأقومهم بدين الله، وأحوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك، فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر، والأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زيد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل، ولحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليك يا تسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين، علي السجاد زين العابدين، ومحمد بن علي الباقر، وجعفر بن محمد الصادق، وموسى بن جعفر القاضم، وعلي بن موسى الرضا، ومحمد التكي الجواد، وعلي النكي الحادي، والحسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا بقية الله في أرضي يا مولاي يا صاحب الزمان. السلام عليك، عجل الله لك ما وعدك من النصر وظهور الأمر ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجه.